Welcome back. On today's episode, we're going to drive this Camaro further than 400 yards. As you saw before, we got the Camaro running. We're on a simple fuel can inside the engine compartment. Probably not the safest, but it works. Running off the mechanical pump. I really wanted to go off a mechanical pump just because I felt like it simplified everything. But we have a fuel pump back there in the tank. So plan 2. Fuel return and supply line run up on the driver's side. They got these pre-ran hoses that went initially to the fuel rail or whatever. So what I did was bought a couple of adapters. I'll make a little chart to show exactly what that is, but that gets us to a single outlet. This 1288.7 Holley regulator. Supposed to be able to go down to like 4.5 pounds. It's supposed to be set at 6 to begin with. We just got to throw in a nippled 3/8 MBT, some fuel line back over the carburetor, disconnect that one, and that problem's solved. So then to replace our mechanical fuel pump down here, we got this fancy Summit block off plate, all as shiny as it can be. And then to ice the cake, we have a little fuel pressure regulator gauge. It'll go into the face of the pressure regulator and give us a reading from 0 to 15 going to the carburetor. But wait, that's not all. All right, so green is the wire that goes to the temp sensor for the gauges. And this is the factory temp sensor. For whatever reason, whenever you look this up, if you're just saying O'Reilly's, AutoZone, whatever, it brings up a 2-wire gauge that is for the actual ECM. Apparently they don't communicate with each other. Who would have guessed? I was on a forum online and was like, hey, I don't know what the heck's going on. I can't get this thing to read. It shows just this green wire for the temp sensor, and this thing has 2 wires. And they're like, yeah, it's just the green wire. I'm like, well, I don't know what I can't explain this any better. The factory sensor has 2 wires on it, and they're like, hey, that's for the ECM. You big retard. And I was like, I guess that's a good point. I had no idea. So, look, I don't know all the stuff about these 3rd gen Camaros. I just like the way they look. In the same similar scenario, this is a 3-wire oil pressure regulator for a 91 Camaro. Similar to this, I thought, well, I could just get a oil pressure regulator sensor and throw it in the, where most people would think oil pressure sensor goes on a 91 Camaro. Also wrong. So it does have both ports, but in the 91 they use this one. Only one of these wires actually feeds to the gauges. One of them feeds, I guess, to the ECM, and the other feeds actually to the fuel pump. That way, if your ECM ever fails to tell the fuel pump to run, then this actually will give it enough power to continue the circuit. So that's the reason why I guess it is the way it is. So that's the plan. Oil pressure sensor, temp sensor, hook up the fuel lines from the tank so that we can use the electric fuel pump through the regulator to the carburetor, take the mechanical fuel pump off, put the block off plate on. Let's go for a ride. I have my going underneath the car hoodie on, because it's nasty from going underneath the car, because we have to put that oil pressure sensor in and hook up the speedo back at the back of the transmission. that should just be 2 wires. Make a quick connection, make sure that works, and then hook up the oil pressure gauge. Should be done underneath the car after that. Then we have to remove the mechanical fuel pump and our temp tank. Once we get the mechanical fuel pump done, we'll need to tighten up everything going to the pressure regulator, plumb that into the carburetor, then get our key on power to the relay for the fuel pump. Once all that's dialed in, really all we'll have left to do is put the temp gauge in, and we should be ready to rock. I was watching Vice Grip Garage this morning while I was barely up and moving, and he was bending his elbow and it was popping, and I was like, man, he's got it bad. But you know, we're not so in good a shape ourselves either. Anyhow, let's get working. All right, so I just got a 9/16 deep socket on this. I don't know if oil's on pour out. I got a couple diapers down here underneath. We'll see what happens. Hopefully not. Well, I can't see from my angle, but from y'all's angle, looks like that stayed in there really nicely. Godzilla, the dang port that this is in is not the same size as the threads. All right, I'll be right back. Oh. There she is. Y'all are surprisingly in the way. I'll do my best not to beat y'all to death. Alright, I'm gonna finish tightening this up and see y'all in a second. Alright, that's all plugged up. Alright, I realize making this connection back up underneath here is not going to be enjoyable at all, so I'm just going to pop this connection off, pull the wires up, and do it on top of the motor. I'm going to go just a little bit longer with this. Boop. Yep. Make sure you cut the tips of your gloves off whenever you're stripping wires. That makes it better. Alright. Pretty simple. Purple to purple. White to white. I don't remember why I cut this. Mainly because I'm dumb. Quick tug. Works. tug works. All right, so using my painless wiring harness kit, they had these, but it was just the metal butt connector itself, and then you would just slide heat shrink over top of it. And I actually like that a lot better. It looks so much cleaner, but being that we're putting this in and then I'm sure I'm not gonna actually go back and take care of it, we're gonna go ahead and heat shrink these real quick. All right, that's set. That's as good as they get. This is the reason why after using the painless harness setup, I understand why they have it the way they have it. Every time you crimp these, you poke a hole in a, you know, what's supposed to be a connection that doesn't make contact. So anyhow, we'll throw a little tape around those because I'm sure I'm not going to actually go back and fix them, but maybe I will. All right, now we just got somehow or another finagle this back down through and onto the far side, and we'll be there. All right, this is my bundle of wires that are coming up from the oil pressure sensor. We supposedly only need the tan one to get oil readings. So we're gonna make a quick connection on this. A little too long. All right, we're gonna do the same thing on this one. We're gonna go ahead and heat shrink this connection because if it works, I'm probably not gonna fix it. Same thing here, just put a little splash of glass tape. We use these for our cable heads on the wireline truck, or this tape. I want to say it's good to like 500 degrees. And the gun strings are rated to 20,000 PSI. So if you tape it well, it's pretty much impervious to pressure or anything else for the most part. Might be good enough there. I think since we're going down the road with this thing, I'm gonna probably maybe zip tie these up right here or something. I'll figure something out. So I left the key on. I was troubleshooting something. Drained the battery all the way down, and now it's saying SOL on my charger, SUL. And with a quick Google, it says the charger has detected a sulfated battery. I don't even know what that means, but it says if it doesn't correct itself within 10 hours, it will say there's an issue with the battery. Assume at that point you have to get it replaced. Anyhow, that's where we're at right now. I guess I'll let you know what happens. All right, so got my fuel lines ran to the regulator. Pushes about 6 PSI. I cut the green and white wire going to the relay. It comes from the ECM. We're not using the ECM anymore, so I just ran a green and white wire to the relay, cut that, took a pink and black, which has 12 volt key on power all the time. Put my temp sensor in, put my oil pressure sensor in. Hooked up my wires to my VSS. And then I got over here, swapped out my fuel pump. And then I got over here and swapped out my fuel pump, and if you can see that, that is not pulled up tight at all. I don't know what is going on. Oh, I see it now. It's catching right there. Dadgummit. Wonder if I can slide that down a little bit. Stand by. And that is still making contact. So I guess we're gonna have to cut a bunch more, or maybe we've already bent it because it's just a piece of aluminum. We'll come back to it in a minute. All right, so I had to ride all the way into town, get a replacement. These bolts feel like they're too long down here on bottom. Well, maybe not. All right, starting from left to right, the speedometer seems to be working and accurate. I hadn't put a GPS to it, but just the feel of it feels about right. Oil pressure seems to be working well. The fuel is coming down, so I'm assuming it's working. I can't tell you for sure. But we've ran it for a little while now and burned 1/8 of a tank, so that's probably about accurate. Temp, I don't know why the pin's all the way at the end, but if you put the key in, it's showing, still warm from driving. The voltmeter for some reason bounces around. I've checked the battery while the car was running, and this was kind of bouncing from somewhere down here close to low back up to 13, and every time on the battery it was showing 13, and out in here it was showing a little low. Maybe we got some kind of ground issue with the gauge cluster or something. And then the tach isn't reading at all. I do know that it's a V6 tach versus a V8, but seems to me like it would be, showing something exaggerated. Like if I'm running at 700 RPMs, it would be running at 1100 RPMs. I don't know exactly what the transfer would be, but it wouldn't be a full double. So yeah. Well, I think that's where we're gonna end this week's video. Took the car out for a run. Probably hit about 90, 100 miles an hour. Seemed to work pretty good. I do have oil coming out of the front fan. I don't even know how that's possible. So we're gonna have to jack it up and look at that. We were definitely getting some form of once it was warmed up, missing. I have a bad feeling it's going to be the dang distributor, which is hard to diagnose. I think it's just, it has like a weird mist to it that fluctuates. I feel like I'm always messing with the timing. It just, everything screams distributor. Let's talk about what we need to do. I'll pop up this list on the screen for y'all. So the first bit of it is simply the fuel system adapter kit that I got. So the first component on the fuel system list is the Holley 1288 887 pressure regulator. I got the part number there for you. The block off plate, which we ended up not using, it was garbage. We ended up using one from O'Reilly's for like 15 bucks. But the problem was the top edge of it like reached up too high and was hanging on the edge of the block. So it would never bind down tight. Next component is the pressure gauge. Pretty simple. Next component is the M1615. That's this silver piece right here that goes into the factory fuel line. The next one is the 14.15. That's this one right here that goes into the factory return line. Next one is 6AN to 3/8. It's the 3/8 MPT that goes into the regulator for the fuel line and the return line. The next is the 90. This 90 down here, taking it back to the return. The next is from the pressure regulator, is a 3/8 MPT to 3/8 barb fuel line, and then a fuel line around to the carburetor. And then last but not least, I built this 6AN to 6AN female to female short hose to fill in this gap. But what I meant to buy was the some 220641B. It's just a female to female 6AN, and that would have made that connection, you know, look like that, except for a little bit tidier. So that's what we did with that. I figured maybe somebody's gonna be wanting to do this, and we could hit them up with a little bit of knowledge. Oil pressure sensor is the factory 3-plug for the 91. Temp gauge is the factory single plug for the 91. Speedo, connected that to the VSS, worked great. I need to get the seat out. The slide rails are not going good. Brakes, I did hook up the vacuum line to the brakes, so that part is done. They work great. I need to find the bolts and bolt on the hood. We'll see when we get to that. Right now, I want it to run properly before we go bolting anything up permanently, you know. So we either have a fuel issue, or we have a timing issue, or we have both, because the motor itself seems to be running okay. So I have a suspicion it's going to be timing. Last handful of things on the list is inspection. To get an inspection, I'm going to need windshield wipers, need to get the exhaust ran. The blinkers aren't working on either side. I'm assuming probably the flasher itself, you know, the little component that makes it act like, you know. And then one reverse light's out, so I'm sure we can just drop that, put a new bulb in, get the hood on, and then we should be able to go for a inspection. Think it'll pass if we get all that stuff done. She's running, she's driving. Let's get her fine-tuned a little bit. Start making some road trips. There it is. 305 swap into a 91. Thank you for watching. If there's anything in particular that you'd like to see specifically with this car, feel free to comment down below. If you have any particular questions that you want answered, please ask away. I'd love to help you out if I can. We'll see you next time.